Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, continuing to take a look at some of these programs that can win a national title in 2023, and we are on no other team than the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, before we even get into the video, just want to say thank you to you guys, especially the Georgia Bulldogs fans. We've been talking a lot of Georgia recruiting. You guys have shown a ton, hot on the trail, and that's no surprise. But you guys have shown just a ton of love to the fellas. So if you do enjoy the content, you like talking ball, consider subscribing to the channel. I'm excited to get into what this Georgia team is going to look like on the field in 2023. Obviously, a lot of talent to replace, but this team has been recruiting at a high level. And you take a look at this depth chart, you don't have many questions about where this program stands heading into 2023. Dill, before we get into the reasons why this team can win a national title, let's hear your overall thoughts on the Georgia Bulldogs heading into 2023 here.
I mean, they've created that type of early 2000s Alabama program where it doesn't matter who they lose, what people think they're going to be coming into a season. This team is just stuffed to the gills with talent, and they're always going to have that attitude that again, you kind of need to have. You need to be like, no, we're the big dogs on the block. When they got to gut a game out against Ohio State, they do it. They just have that mindset.
Or Missouri. They gutted that one out too.
There's just no doubt in their mind they're going to win these football games. And in Kirby Smart, he's made that the case. Like, he's just going to have a national title contending football team for the foreseeable future until something drastic changes. Because
it doesn't seem like anything's changing anytime soon in Athens. And you noted the talent. What Georgia's done a really nice job of is not only acquiring the talent. We see some teams get hot on the recruiting trail. The other element is developing talent and cultivating that culture that is championship level. And that is clearly evident within this Georgia program. Now, to get into the reasons, taking a look at this depth chart, why Georgia can win a national title in 2023, Dill, it starts up front. And this offensive line, and I as a Michigan fan, and we have a lot of Michigan listeners, and I apologize for what I'm about to say, though we talked about it pre-show. It's the best offensive line in the country. I know Michigan's won back-to-back Joe Moore Award winner trophies. Like, this Georgia Bulldogs team heading into 2023, if you're asking me to pick an offensive line, I don't know if I'm picking any other offensive line than the Georgia Bulldogs.
I mean, those three on the interior, like, that's going to be like the best interior offensive line we've seen, and it feels like such a long time in college football. I mean, you have three guys who I think probably could have gone to the draft and been picked fairly high.
All three of those guys would have been picked. Cedric Van Pran, I'm pretty confident would have been my number one center last year in the NFL draft. I mean, Cedric Van Pran,
the nastiest players in the world. They're so physical. They're so tough, and they're just like, they wear people down. They're just so good.
Xavier Truss is a dog, and then Tate Ratledge, a dude that when he's healthy, like, not many better guards in the country than Tate Ratledge. So it starts in that interior, and then, okay, we lose Warren McClendon, we lose Broderick Jones, two guys that are NFL draft picks. Obviously, Broderick Jones going in the first round. Okay, we replace him with 2 5-stars, right? Xavier Mims sounds like it's staying at the right tackle spot. Xavier Mims in 10 months.
Amarius Mims,
excuse me. Shout out Amarius Mims. I was getting Xavier Truss, Amarius Mims, a lot of names to keep in my head.
Gotcha.
Amarius Mims is going to be, and now I feel like a jerk for messing up his name, because he's going to be a first-round pick next year. Like,
that's the thing. He's giving off major Broderick Jones vibes, where he didn't necessarily start all year, but then you see this guy, like, where did he come from? He might be better than the two who are in there. It's like, and that's not to, like, he's definitely, he wasn't necessarily, but it's just they roll in these wildly talented players who come right off the bench, and they're just like, this kid starts on any other program in the country. He's that good.
Yeah, I mean, that they kept him out of the portal. That last summer about this time, he hit the transfer portal, was reportedly going to go to Florida State. I mean, that goes back to that Kirby Smart culture. Like, hey, trust the process. He's the only guy that he needs to play 1 year, show it, and he's going to the draft. Like, special talent. And then at the left tackle spot, it sounds like there's still a battle, but you got two really, really good options. Ernest Green, another former 5-star guy coming out of high school, coming into his second year. Sounds like he has the inside track, but Austin Blaska is another guy that, a veteran dude, you could start. I mean, there's a couple guys who I think would start at any other program in the country at tackle, not any other program, but a lot of other programs in the country. That's how loaded they are on the offensive line. Not only do they have a really good starting 5, but they've recruited to that level where I mean, we were rolling 8, 9, 10 guys deep that if you have injuries, if you have to have another guy step up, they got plenty of guys to step up. And Dill, an offensive line, a good run game, best friend to a quarterback. And that's our next point is obviously you lose Stetson Bennett. And this is more of a question to the Georgia fans. Dill and I have been talking about this. And Dill, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Do we potentially have a situation where, yeah, we might have a lower floor? Like Stetson Bennett was a gamer. And I'm not one of those guys that just like, oh, Stetson Bennett was a product of that offense. No, Stetson Bennett was a stud at the college football level. Do you potentially, with a guy like Carson Beck or Brock Vandagriff, if he somehow wins that job, do you potentially have a higher ceiling of quarterback play heading into 2023?
Well, that's what you have. I mean, it's, again, go back to what Stetson Bennett was. He was a winner. Like, he wasn't necessarily the main reason Georgia was winning football games necessarily, but again, when he needed to gut out games like that Ohio State game, he played really, really good, made a lot of plays. They weren't running the ball like you maybe would have thought they would have in that football game, and he showed that he's got that dog in him. He does the man for that job, but there's also a reason he wasn't really picked very high in the NFL draft. Like, he is not a wildly talented quarterback. He's just a gamer. If you get one of these two guys, they're the 5-star kind of prototype guy. If they develop, and it's not to say they will be, because those are monster shoes to fill with Stetson Bennett. But if they develop into like the guys they were recruited to be and thought to be, yeah, they're more talented.
I'll tell you right now, I watched the whole Georgia spring game. Carson Beck looked awesome, like truly, truly awesome. And I know there's a lot of fans that want Brock Vandagriff, like the 5-star arm. He's going into his 3rd year. Kirby has showed that I'm going to start the core. I don't give a dang about 24/7 rankings, high school recruiting rankings. I'm going to start the quarterback. He started Stetson Bennett over JT Daniels, who's a former 5-star. Like, Kirby does not bend to the recruiting rankings. He's going to pick the best quarterback. And I think when it all boils down to it, like, you have, I mean, honestly, you could say 3 good options. And these 3 quarterbacks probably starting on most of the SEC schools. Like, Brock Vandagriff, if he were to hit the portal and he could transfer within the SEC, which he obviously couldn't, probably would have started at like 10 programs in the SEC. That's how good Brock Vandagriff is. And he might be their quarterback too. And so when it comes down to it, yes, you have, it's a little bit more of a question mark, right? You knew what you were getting with Stetson Bennett. You got a winner. But you might have a higher, in terms of like what quarterback play you could get, you might have a higher ceiling with a guy like Carson Beck or Brock Vandagriff heading into 2023. And man, if Georgia has another elite quarterback in the chamber, it's really hard to see Georgia not winning another national title. And the last thing, we'll talk about the defense, because that's certainly a reason why they're going to win a national championship. But the offensive weapons around the quarterback, I think, might be the best we've seen in a couple of years for Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you lose Adonai Mitchell to the portal, but a guy who, again, at Georgia,
he didn't play.
You just wish you got to see him. And again, like, when he was on the field, he was really, really good. I thought he played really well against Ohio State. But you do have some incredible players, and that's obviously led by Brock Bowers. I mean, he might be the best college football player going. Like, he's that good in my opinion. I mean, he catches everything. He's always open. He runs incredibly well after. He's just like the perfect tight end. I don't know how else to describe it. He's like, I mean, we all thought that was Michael Mayer, I feel like 3 years ago. And then we take a look at Brock Bowers. Like, well, this guy's a much faster. He's got much better hands, and he runs
smoother athlete too. Like, that's like, I mean, and we don't need to talk much about Brock Bowers, because all the Georgia fans know Brock Bowers is that dude. That discussion of like who's the best tight end in the country last year, and you saw the Notre Dame fans saying Michael Mayer was better, like, out of this world insanity. Like, Brock Bowers, so clearly the best. He's so clearly been the best tight end for the last 3 years in college football. I mean, it's just truly special. But then you get to the path, like the wide receivers. You bring in Dominic Lovett, who's sneaky, was the number one, had the most receiving yards in the SEC last year, coming from Missouri. Thomas, also a very productive receiver at Mississippi State. Kirby doesn't take much from the portal. That was obviously something he wanted to address. And that room isn't not talented. It just like really struggled to stay healthy. But Ladd McConkey, another guy that he's not going to wow you with the measurables, but
a reliable winner. That's what you got with him.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's like this Georgia team is comprised of like a bunch of 5-star stud athletes, and you had like Stetson Bennett and Ladd McConkey, who are like not recruited out of high school, came in and are just winners. They get the job done. But a couple other guys to like, no, Arian Smith, absolute burner. Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, like these guys are super talented, and if they can put it together, I do think this pass catching
Well,
group.
those two, especially when they were healthy in that Ohio State game, were really, really good. And
Yes.
I think that's when you get to see, like, again, they were all healthy for that game. You get a bit of a layoff heading into that playoff. So it got healthy, and then they were just ready to rock and roll. And you see, like, man, where's this been all season? Where's this explosive pass game? And you probably could argue they could just hammer it down everyone's throats. So, like, I do think that kind of shot doesn't maybe let a Rosemy Jackson Saint shine or an Arian Smith, but they're ultra talented. They're going to be really good, and we'll see. I mean, they may have a maybe more passing friendly system this year too.
I don't know. I mean, like Jordan, like we'll talk. I mean, we can touch on the running backs. Another guy I want to note, Oscar Delp, like another just absolute stud tight end. You're going to see a lot of 12 personnel, and I think just the fact that we've for the last 3 minutes have just rattled off like really, really good players at that pass catcher position shows how talented this is. And you got a trio of running backs. I want to see Branson Robinson get some more carries because that dude is an absolute hammer. But again, Kendall Milton, very good. DeJohn Edwards, very good. Three-headed backfield that they're going to run the football a lot. They got 3 really good running backs to keep fresh and kind of keep hammering it down.
I mean, that's just been the story of Georgia. They just had running backs emerge from the weeds.
Low key though, like Zamir, like back when like Zamir White and James Cook, and then it's like Kendall Milton and Kenny McIntosh, and now it's like Kendall Milton, DeJohn Edwards, Branson Robinson. Like it's
DeJohn Edwards, you barely didn't really know much about him, and then you see him breaking out monster runs. Like, who is this guy? And they just turn him over incredibly well. It's really, I don't know how they do it, but they do it.
They get it done. All right. It is time to talk about the defense, though, because when you talk about Georgia and why they are national title contenders, or we should really just say favorites, this is and you've heard Kirby Smart say this is about as green of as a defense as we've seen for Georgia, right? That being said, it might be inexperienced, but it's extremely talented. Though, let's start up front. Mikel Williams, probably one of the best pass rushers in the whole entire country.
Yeah, and that like he really started to come on last season. You saw just a big physical. If he just kind of like develops a little more smoothness and like some pass rush skill to the game, it's like you see that big, long, athletic kind of frame that he's got. I just don't see. I mean, I don't see how he doesn't turn into that next like dominant defensive lineman who you're just like, how do you block him from Georgia?
And one of the things we've talked about, and we talked about it a little bit with the recruiting, is not only are they star-studded, but their depth is insane. Like a guy like Zion Logue probably starts on most SEC teams, and he's just being rotated in. It's the depth on that defensive line, not to mention some guys that we probably left off this list. Marvin Jones Jr., probably another guy that's going to break out. Jordan Hall is a true freshman, probably going to make some noise.
Jalen Walker, I think, is so good. I feel like he didn't really get his chance to shine as much this season, but I think he's going to play a lot more football. I think, again, he's got that. You see that they have just a level of power and explosiveness in what they do that, again, as much as once they refine the kind of game around it, you just have incredible talent from that edge rushing position that, frankly, I don't think dominated the way you've seen at Georgia in the past, especially with Smith going down.
Yeah, I was going to say, it definitely hurts when you lose a first-round draft pick.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like they didn't – I mean, it's not to say it wasn't a good position, but I feel like it's just going to be unbelievable this year.
Yeah, the ceiling is mine. That's like you could really say that because then you go back to the linebacker spot and, man, like if it doesn't remind you of a little bit like with the Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, Channing Tindall era, Smile Munden, Jamon Dumas Johnson, 2 linebackers who are all over the football field. I am a massive fan of how Georgia uses their linebackers. Like going back and when we talked about Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall, like they don't use those linebackers as just guys who can tackle. They use them as like defensive weapons, firing them in the A-gap, moving around the formation. You have 2 linebackers who are both returning, both very productive and good in 2022. You look across the country, I think it'd be very tough sledding to find a linebacker duo that's better than these guys.
I mean, do you not love watching them play? Like how like they're like you see a lot of linebackers, I feel like kind of go sideline to sideline.
No, downhill.
Yeah. These guys just they're attacking the ball, they're making plays at the line of scrimmage or behind it. And I feel like you just don't see that as much in college football because teams want to not give up big plays and try to force teams kick field goals. But Georgia's still just, you just fire downhill. They're super physical. They take on blocks hard. they're just like that old breed of net, but they're like they have that new breed of athleticism too. They're just, and you say it there. It's just like how Nakobe Dean, Channing Tindall, Quay Walker played. It's just how Georgia linebackers play. They're just so physical. They're so aggressive. You gotta love watching them.
And it's so wild because you look at the future, like Raylan Wilson, the true freshman coming in, former Michigan commit. That's still salty a little bit about that, but like those guys are going to do the exact same thing. Like truly, that's why
I think that's how they're coached. I think that's how, like, you heard that Kirby Smart speech before the game. It's like
elite.
Yeah, he just wants to be in your face. He wants to beat teams up, and they go out there and they do it.
Elite, absolutely elite. Now the secondary is, I think, arguably better, and I know that sounds crazy, losing a guy like Christopher Smith, losing a guy like Keely Ringo. The guy I want to highlight, arguably the guy I'm most excited for in 2023 for Georgia, Tyke Smith, who I feel like people forget was an All-American at West Virginia. He comes to Georgia. I was super excited for him coming to 2021, gets hurt. 2022, not as much. Like Tyke Smith at that star position, you know how they like to use that. Very excited about him. Kamari Lassiter is an absolute stud. Malachi Starks, Javon Bullard, obviously dogs in the back.
That's the big spot is those safeties, man. Like you saw Javon Bullard, that hit in that game, and he was doing that all year. I mean, he's a hammer. Yeah. Malachi Starks, I feel like complements him well, a bit more athletic and probably rangy in that way, and maybe covers, but they're just like these two guys. I think they complement each other perfectly. Very young players. I think they're going to have monster years, both of them.
Yeah, and they moved Javon. I think Javon Bullard was playing a lot of that star position in 2022, and to me, you had to. I think Kirby Smart's looking at this and is like, we got to make room for Tyke Smith. Like he's actually very, very good. Now the one, like this is where I think we might get better on the. Now I say we. This Georgia team might get better in the secondary here. Is you move Javon Bullard to that safety spot. Tyke Smith coming in at that star. The position that I think you upgrade, right? I think Javon Bullard is probably better than Christopher Smith in the back end, I would say.
Now, Christopher Smith's awesome, but you probably do have a little higher ceiling with
Bullard. He was just capped. Yeah, athletically capped. I think that's why you saw him going, and we loved him in the draft. Like me and you both, like just a super solid safety, but probably athletically just a little limited. Javon Bullard probably offers a little bit more. That other cornerback spot, here's my argument. And like Keely Ringo, there's a reason he was 6'2", 210 pounds, length for days, 4.40. There's a reason why he went in day 3, like because he wasn't.
Great. He wasn't that elite man like cover guy. He was like, again, he had ball skills. There were a lot of parts to his game that you really liked, but he wasn't that type of guy who was going to lock up a number one wideout.
And so you look at the cornerbacks that could be Dalen Everett. Like again, this is why they're so good. Another former 5-star guy, like are battling for that job. Smoke Bowie coming over from Texas A&M. AJ Harris, the true freshman. I mean, they got 3 options that are extremely, extremely talented dudes that, man, it's just at this point, it's a numbers game. Like one of those guys is going to be very, very good. If not all 3 of them, you just rotate them in and out. That like, I think it makes a lot of sense for saying this secondary looks better. And so at this point, and to kind of close it out here, when you're Georgia and you recruit at the level they recruit and you develop at the level they develop, it's really hard to look at this depth chart. I get how much NFL draft talent they lost and say this team is not the number one contender to win a national title.
No, and they've become that team. Like it doesn't matter. I don't need to see a roster. I don't need to see anything. I just know they're coming and they're going to be really hard to beat. That's just unless you have like a transcendent player, like even a Bryce Young who wasn't able to take them. And I mean, obviously did beat them in the SEC title, and then Georgia came back and kind of asserted their dominance in the title game. But like, I don't see, unless you have a guy or like a Caleb Williams who just can totally dominate a football game, I don't see an avenue to just beating this team man on man, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's probably
the best. So hard. They're just like, they're so good everywhere. They're so well coached. They don't beat themselves ever. It's the complete. You need a transcendent player. Like
yeah, this is, and again, like we ain't even Georgia. We're Michigan fans, but it's really hard not to kind of fall in love with what Georgia's doing and how they're running the program.
If you can't admit that
it's truly special. Again, we'll wrap it up there. Appreciate you guys checking the fellas out. Georgia fans, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, let us know in the comment section if we left any players out. Add them to our notebook. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.